Hi, my name is Mark Love, and I am an avid, and I mean avid in all capital letters, fans of Viking cruising. In the past 8 years, my wife and I have been all over the world. We've been to Europe multiple times, we've been to Asia, and we've been to Antarctica even. And I thought it would be fun to share some of our adventures with Viking with you today. This is a picture of my wife and I on one of our Viking cruises, and we live in Sunrise, Florida, which is on the west side of Fort Lauderdale. We are both high school teachers, now retired, and we had thought we would go on a once in a lifetime trip. And the way this all started was I taught world history and economics at the local high school, and my wife was a health and PE teacher. When I graduated from college, I had received a travel magazine, and as I was flipping through it, there was a picture of a castle on a hill overlooking a river in Europe. Turned out to be Marksburg Castle overlooking the Rhine River, and I said to myself, someday I want to go on that trip. So in 2014, three other couples reached out to me because I'm the planner of the group, and they're like, we would like to go on a trip of a lifetime. Can you find something for us? And so immediately I thought of this castle overlooking the Rhine River and started to look into it. And that is where I first found Viking cruises. I looked at the itinerary, the Grand European, which went for us from Budapest to Amsterdam, and presented that to all of our friends. And for various reasons, two of the couples couldn't go, but one other couple booked it with us. And in 2015, my wife Kim and I went on the Grand European. We flew to Budapest. We had a 3-day extension before the trip, and then post-cruise, we had a 3-day extension in Amsterdam. So we were so excited and so looked forward to this once-in-a-lifetime adventure. When we landed in Budapest, one of the first things that impressed us as we began to learn about Viking was we were greeted at the airport as we came out of the luggage area, and Viking representatives in their Viking shirts, they were like, Mr. Love, right over here. And I just was so impressed that they knew me and were waiting for me there at the gate, immediately whisked our bags away and took us to one of the nicest hotels in Budapest. There we were greeted by the Viking host who had a handout for us with multiple different excursions that we could partake in while we were there on the pre-stay. We then went to our room and we just had an amazing view of the Danube River, the chain bridge looking out our window. And we're like, wow, this is even better than we thought it would be. We looked over the excursions that the host had given us and decided on one in particular to see the area around Budapest. And the next day we went down to the lobby and explained that this is the one we'd like to go on, only to come to find out that not enough guests had signed up to go on that. And when our host told us that, he explained that he could get us a private guide for just the four of us. And so on the third day, that's how we saw the surrounding area of Budapest, thanks to the Viking host. We just wanted to see as much of Budapest as we could, and the sites were just, there were so many to see, and we knew that we were going to see some of them as part of the itinerary with the cruise ship, but we went to see the Parliament building on our own, we went to see the market on our own, and before we had left for the trip, we had found a river cruise right there in Budapest at night to see the historic buildings all lit up. So I asked the host about that, and he walked us out to the dock, which was right behind the hotel. I said, it's so convenient. It's right out here. This is a great trip. And it's only 3,000. And I had done my research and I knew that euros and dollars were roughly equivalent. And I thought, oh my, have I committed ourselves to $3,000? And he must have seen the look on our face and he chuckled. And he said, you're thinking that we use euros here in Budapest, but we don't. We have our own currency. I'm like, oh, good. And it was only $27 instead of $3,000, which was much better. So that night we boarded the ship and got our first glimpse of Budapest after dark. And all of the buildings were so dynamic and so exciting to see. This is the Parliament building lit up at night. And when we saw this live, see the little dots above above the Parliament there, and we're like, what is that? Well, it turns out the birds love to fly over the Parliament building with the lights at night, and it makes for a very picturesque setting. We also floated under the historic chain bridge. It was just a great way to start off our trip. The third day, we spent the whole day with the private host that had been set up by Viking. And then the guy dropped us off at our ship, checked into our room. And then the first full day of the cruise, we took a city tour of Budapest. From the time we had booked the trip, I was looking forward to going to Fisherman's Bastion, which overlooks the Danube River, and having my picture taken as like the picture of the trip with the turrets in the background. And here you can see me there. And I can remember so clearly thinking as my wife took this picture that like, I have waited so long for this once in a lifetime moment. And now here it is. As we set off that afternoon sailing, I came to find out one of the best things about any Viking cruise, especially the rivers, and that's the cruising. Cruising days or cruising afternoons are, for me, one of my favorite times. I just love to either look out our window or to go up to the top deck and just watch the countryside of Europe or Asia just float by so gently and take in all the sights while we're floating along on the long ships. Every stop along the way I could tell stories about every single stop. They were all great. The guides that Viking lined up were all amazing. And I have pictures from every single day that were just so cool to look at. This particular slide is in Vienna. We went to the Schönbrunn Palace on the optional excursion. And as amazing as the palace is, if you are ever in Vienna and take this excursion, let me tell you that the best part about going to Schönbrunn Palace is they have a gift shop, and right beside it is a small restaurant. In that restaurant, they have the best strudel in the world. And trust me, I've tried strudel all over the world, and nothing is better than the strudel at the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna. While we were on the Grand European, we went through several different locks. I think it was more than a dozen as we climbed up and then came back down across Europe. Going through the locks was one of our favorite things to do. You can't even imagine until you've experienced this what it's like to be on the ship as you go through the lock, because the space between the ship and the wall, sometimes you couldn't even fit your hand in between. It is so narrow. And the captains do such a great job, but obviously you're on the water. There's going to be some bumping and jostling. But to come in one side at one level and to go out the other side at another level, it's just fascinating to experience this, especially from the top deck. Some of the locks that we went through were in the middle of the night. And so we learned that if there is jostling in the middle of the night, to just ignore it. We're going through a lock. But one morning outside of Nuremberg, we got up, and as I went into the main lobby to get coffee, I could tell that we were like just floating dead in the water in the middle of nowhere. And I found the program director, and I remember saying, "I'm guessing this isn't a scheduled stop." And he smiled and he said, "No, in the middle of the night, if you heard the jostling on the boat, that was the engines dying." I'm like, "Oh, that can't be good." He said, "Nope, not to worry though. We've got the buses lined up. They'll be here shortly, take you into Nuremberg. And when the excursion is over, either this ship or another ship will be waiting for you at the appointed place and time." And I thought, how cool is this, that Viking handles this kind of stuff so smoothly and so seamlessly for us. And that's exactly the way it went that day. We got on the buses, we took tours, came off the tours, got on the buses and went back. If there was the ship, they had repaired the ship, and everything was fine from there on out. And it's the Viking staff that makes such a difference. It's one of the things that probably, if you said, pick one thing that you love most about Viking, it's the staff. They make you feel like you are the most important person on the ship. By the morning of the second day, when you walk through the lobby, they know you by name. "Good morning, Mr. Love. How are you today, Mr. Love?" When you go into the restaurant, they know what you like. They know how you like it. "Would you like Eggs Benedict again today? Do you want that extra scoop of ice cream on your dessert today, Mr. Love?" It's just so special to be with Viking. And when the trip ended, all four of us agreed it truly was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that we would never forget. Well, within a month, we received an email from Viking, and the email said, as a past guest of Viking, we're offering you a special $99 round trip airfare to France if you would like to come. And one of the dates that was available was right on my wife's spring break. She was still teaching. I was already retired. And so we decided we would go on our second Viking trip to Lyon in France. Right on her spring break, we flew into Nice and we did a pre-stay there. And just as before, greeted at the airport, hello, Mr. Love, right over here, I'll take your bags. Took us to the hotel. And one thing that was different on this itinerary and this pre-extension was when our host met us in the lobby, the excursions that they had were all being provided as part of the package. And so we had 3 days to tour Nice with our Viking guides, all included as part of the basic package. One of the most interesting stories of the trip was we loved Viking so much that we talked my wife's twin sister and her husband into joining us. They did not do the pre-extension, and they were going to meet us in Avignon. On the final day, as we were about to leave the hotel to take the bus trip to Avignon, we got a text message from my wife's twin sister that their flight connecting in Paris had been canceled because of an air traffic controllers strike, and they were stranded in Morocco and didn't know what was going to happen. So we went to our Viking hosts, explained the situation, and from that point, all throughout the rest of the day, the Viking people worked to get my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law to the ship on time. They arranged a private car to pick them up, and when the car brought them to the ship around midnight that night, Viking people were waiting for them on the boat, and I remember as we greeted them, they said, we'll open up the kitchen and we'll fix anything you would like. And I just thought, this is so typical of Viking. They make you feel like you are the most important person, and they want you to have the best of times. After that, the trip went off without a hitch, and it was just an amazing adventure again, all throughout France. One of the most interesting excursions, and if I had to rank them on this trip that we had as the best one, came on, I think it was the second or the third day, where we went to Le Beau, France. And what I was interested in doing in this excursion as a former world history teacher was there was a medieval village on top of this rocky hill. So the bus pulls up and our guide comes on the microphone and says, before we visit the village, we're going to go visit a rock quarry. And I looked at my wife and I'm like, why in the middle of the day, in the heat of the day, are we going to go wander around a rock quarry? And I thought, well, whatever. So we get off the bus, and as we head down, we find out, first of all, we're not going to be outside. We're going underground in the rock quarry, so at least it's going to be cooler. We go into the rock quarry, and there, being projected all over the walls, all over the ceilings, and all over the floors were the works of the famous painter Chagall, all set to music. And it was just stunning. You can see how high the walls were, the silhouettes of the people here in my photographs. And we wandered around for a good hour, just amazed at this presentation inside a rock quarry. And afterwards, we looked at each other and said, who would have thought that a rock quarry would have become our most favorite excursion of the adventure? And the lesson this taught us was, Vikings been on these itineraries before. They know what they're doing. And if they say they're going to take you to a rock quarry, there's a good reason for that. And it's going to be a fabulous experience. Like on the first trip, the people on the ship, fabulous. The food to die for. This picture I took was on French Pastry Day. And I included this slide because, there's one thing about Viking desserts. When you're on vacation with Viking, that those don't have any calories. So you can have as many as you like and enjoy all of the excellent food that's provided. Had such a good time on my second Viking adventure that now I was hooked. And so I started looking into other trips, and I found one for the fall that I wanted to go on, but unfortunately my wife could not go. She couldn't get off work. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try going solo. And so I did. I flew to Bordeaux for the wine cruise with Viking. And one of the reasons that I did this was because I'd never been a fan of wine. And with wine and alcohol being provided, wine and different drinks being provided for free, on the ship at lunch and dinner, I thought I should at least like wine and find kinds of wine that would be good for me. And so I flew over here to France and went to so many different wineries and did acquire a taste for wine. It was just a great trip. But the one concern I had heading into this adventure was being without my wife. What would it be like at dinner and at lunchtime? Would I meet people and have good conversations? I thought that would happen, but I'm not the most outgoing of persons in a social setting. The first lunch, the first dinner, the second lunch all went smoothly enough. And the second night at dinner, as I walked into the dining room, I saw a table for 8, and there was an elderly lady sitting there. And she looked like she had a companion who was not at the table with her. And I thought, this will be safe. So I went over and asked if I could join her. And she said, "Oh, yes, dear, that would be lovely." We just started our conversation. And within a minute or two, the waiter came up and said, "Ma'am, your friend has seated herself at another table." And the lady said, "I'm sorry, I'm going to go join my friend." And I thought, great, exactly what I was afraid of. Here I am at a table for 8, all by myself. Immediately, I heard a voice over my shoulder say, "Sir, are you alone? Come join our table." And I met John and Kim, a couple from Montreal, who invited me to have dinner with them, and we became the best of friends. And this is another thing that we have found to be true of every Viking trip that we've been on. We meet so many fabulous people, and almost always they become lifelong friends. John and Kim, we've stayed in touch. We're Facebook friends. We exchange messages all the time. When they went on a cruise that sailed out of Fort Lauderdale, they came to our house. We went to a hockey game together. It was just the best of times. At their table were 3 middle-aged younger women who were high school friends traveling together. And eventually the 2 elderly ladies joined us. And the 8 of us became the best of friends, spent our excursions together, and so enjoyed every single moment. So much so that when I flew home and my wife picked me up at the airport, on the nearly half-hour ride back to the house, I talked nonstop about what a great time I'd have with Viking again. And as we pulled up in the driveway, my wife said, "You realize you've talked the whole time about the trip, but not once have you mentioned anything about the trip. It's all been about the people that you met and how you had such a good time on your Viking cruise with all your new friends." I said, "Yes, indeed. One of the perks that we had." The next big trip with Viking, we decided to go to Asia, and we booked the Imperial Jewels of China. Such an amazing once-in-a-lifetime. We've had so many once-in-a-lifetime adventures. This itinerary includes land before and after the cruise on the Yangtze River. We flew to Shanghai. We spent 2 days there before we flew to Wuhan. And then we got on the ship and sailed on the Yangtze for 7 days and 8 nights before getting off and going through China again. Again, the excursions, just amazing. This picture is taken at the top of the Shibazi Temple. If you watch any Viking videos about their China itineraries, they talk about the Shibazi Temple. You climb up 9 stories, 11 steps each that are hundreds of years old to reach the top and get this panoramic view. Just an amazing experience. But of course, if you go to China, the 2 things that you just have to do, one is to see the terracotta warriors. It was over 100 degrees this day. And because it's an active archaeological dig site where they're still digging to this day, there's no air conditioning. There's just a cover over it. And so we were so hot, but not a single person complained about that. We were just stunned. And you can look at the expression on my wife's face. It was just amazing. A couple of interesting stories about the terracotta warriors. 2 farmers were digging a well about where the rail is, actually, and they kept finding pieces of porcelain. And they thought something must be here, and so they called in the local authorities. And that's how this whole site was discovered, where the emperor had buried hundreds of terracotta soldiers to protect his tomb. The other thing that's interesting is all the soldiers, you can see them there in the background, of the hundreds of soldiers that are standing there at attention, all with different facial expressions, different faces, none but one were intact. So all the terracotta soldiers that you see there They've all been pieced back together by the archaeologists. It's, it's, it's just amazing. It alone is worth the trip to China. But of course, if you go to China, you have to climb the Great Wall of China. Now, let me tell you something. When you use the phrase climbing the Great Wall of China, that is exactly what it is. You'll see videos of people walking around the Great Wall of China. The vast majority of it is like this. And this picture truly doesn't capture how steep it is, nor does it capture the steps in the center. Those steps are not the regular height that steps are in household. It's a big reach to climb up those steps. And you can literally lean over and put your hands out, and they'll touch the ground, and you're only bent at a 45-degree angle as you're climbing to the various tops of these peaks as the wall winds around the hillsides. And when you look over the edge, you're several hundred feet up in the air. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Here we are posing in the Great Wall. I didn't make it all the way to the top, but my wife, you see very, very top, you see like a tower. My wife made it all the way to the top and back. One of the things that we've learned, which is really cool about the Viking itineraries, is when you go on an excursion, the local guides are so knowledgeable and they each provide their own unique twist to the excursion. We learned this when on our Rhine getaway, which we went on about 3 years after our initial trip on the Grand European. Our stop was in Cologne, and this is a photograph of the famous Cologne Cathedral. The excursion for that day, just like on the Grand European, was a city tour which highlighted the cathedral. When we were on the Grand European, we walked around the outside of the cathedral as the guide told us stories and the history of the cathedral. And then we got 15 minutes to go inside on our own and look around. My wife and I, on the second visit to Cologne, even discussed maybe not going on the excursion because we'd already done it. We didn't know any better. And then in the end, we decided, well, what else are we going to do this morning? So we went on the excursion. Well, when we got to the cathedral, our guide took us inside the cathedral, and we spent 45 minutes in there as she told us stories of all the things inside the cathedral, a completely different experience. And we've had this happen over and over again so that you can go on the same itinerary at the same time of year, and it's going to be a completely different experience. Go at a different time of year with different weather, and it's an even more different kind of experience. So, and we've done that several times to enjoy. It was around this time that we were wondering, are the Viking oceans as Viking-ish as the river cruises? We'd been on other ocean cruises with other big cruise ships, and we thought it would be interesting to try a Viking oceans trip. And so we booked the Into the Midnight Sun. The first interesting story about this itinerary and adventure with Viking, I always put together an itinerary of all of our stops, the days and the times. I send it out to our family so that they'll know where we are as they follow our adventure. Our itinerary was supposed to start on a Tuesday, and I remember our oldest son calling me on Sunday, and he said, so tomorrow's the big day. I'm like, you didn't look at the itinerary, did you? We don't leave until Tuesday. And he's like, I could have sworn you left on Monday. I'm like, no, we don't. So we finished our conversation, hung up. The next day, Monday, my son called me on his way to work, and he said, so today's the big day. And I shook my head, and I'm like, kids today don't pay attention to their parents. I'm like, I sent you the itinerary. Tomorrow is when the trip starts. It's like, I looked at the itinerary. I could have sworn that you leave today. Like, no, we finished our conversation. We hung up. Moments later, I get a screenshot from his phone of our itinerary showing that we are leaving on Monday. And I'm like, is that a typo? And so I went to our air reservations. No, I had forgot as an international trip, you'd leave the day before. So I look over at my wife who was talking to our daughter on the phone, and I said, honey, and she gives me the one finger, wait a minute. I'm like, honey, we have 3 hours to get to the airport. My wife then says to our daughter, I have to hang up. I need to go get my nails done. We're leaving today. And I said, you have to get your nails done? We have to go. She goes, don't worry, we have plenty of time. And sure enough, she got her nails done. We were mostly packed already. We got to the airport in plenty of time for our adventure on Viking Oceans. One of the greatest things about Viking oceans, in my opinion, compared to the rivers, is just like the rivers, there is an included excursion every single day. But one of the biggest differences is when you're on the rivers, probably half, 60% of the time, there's an optional excursion that you can purchase to make your day more full. But on the oceans, in addition to the included excursion, there are almost always at least 24 optional excursions. And of those 24, probably 20 are like, oh my, I have to do this excursion. So what my wife and I have come to do is I will print out a document, some 10 to 15 pages in length, of all the excursions, and then we will go through them separately, marking the excursions as, no, I don't want to do this. I would be interested in this. I have to do this. Then we compare our excursion choices. And if there's a day where I have to do this, and she's like, I'm not interested, we'll go our separate ways. And we try to coordinate as many of them as we can. And usually, most days, we do have that. But one of the lessons that we learn, because there are so many to choose from, is that you'll do all this preparation and you finally narrow down, like, this is what we want to do on these days. Then when it comes time to book them online, sometimes there are time conflicts and you can't do the excursion that you want to. And other times, the excursions are marked as sold out. On our Rhine getaway a couple years earlier, there had been an optional excursion that I wanted to reserve, and it was sold out. And so we chose the second optional excursion. The night before, our program director said there were openings for both. And when I went to the desk and asked, they told us that, yes, they always save a certain percentage for onboard bookings. So as we booked our excursions for our first ocean trip, I decided I'm not going to book an alternative if there are excursions available once we get to the ship. So I called Viking, and I was told that, yes, they save about 20% of them. Don't book any other excursions because you don't get a refund on them. Wait till you get on board. So when we got to London and boarded the ship, first thing we did is we went to the excursion desk. I had a whole sheet of about a dozen excursions, got every excursion we wanted exactly in the times that we wanted it. And the reason I share this is because almost every night at dinner, when topic of conversation would turn to what did you do today, there was almost always someone who said, we did this, we had a really good time, but we had wanted to do this, but it was sold out. And I would share my story that the next time you come out of Viking Oceans, wait till you get on board. Another thing I would suggest on the Viking Oceans, think outside the box. There are so many options that you don't want to do just the traditional. This is a photograph that was taken in Geringer Bay in Norway. And what most people chose is to take the excursion that takes you to the top of the hillside. If you Google Geringer Fjord, there's this picture that comes up that's just, oh my, panoramic view. And that's what everybody wanted to have. We decided to do the jet boat actually on the fjord. And so we get in this jet boat, we zip all over the place all morning long in the two multiple 100-feet waterfalls that are part of any picture that you take Geringer for. Our boat went right, I mean, literally the front of the boat was touching the rock at the base of the waterfall with the water splashing all over the bow of the boat. And we just looked straight up at the waterfall. It was so cool. And I can remember as my wife filmed the video from that day, me saying, this was the best excursion of the trip. It was just amazing. So Viking Oceans, a wonderful experience with Viking. One of the most unique and one of my favorite itineraries to take with Viking are the Christmas markets. Especially living in South Florida where we don't get the winter weather, there is nothing more magical than going to Europe during the holidays, in my opinion. I love the Christmas market itineraries. What we have done on both of our Christmas market itineraries is we buy door decorations. And when we get to the ship, we put them on our doors. This picture is taken, we were going with another couple and we bought one for their door and one for ours. And what's funny is on both itineraries, after the door decorations were up, I've heard multiple guests walk by our door and I've heard them say to their partner, passenger guest, whatever, Like, why do they get to have a special door? Why is their door decorated? Well, that's because we bring it along to make it more festive. The scenery as you float along the rivers, just amazing. The snow-covered hillsides, the wineries, the vineyards, the castles, the quaint European towns covered in snow, just stunning. This picture is from our first Christmas markets cruise along the Danube River, and the day we floated through the Waku River Valley. I could not have scripted it better. The snowflakes were the size of silver dollars, just gently floating all morning long. It was like being in our own personal snow globe as we floated by all of the different towns, vineyards, and castles. The Christmas markets, so many quaint little stalls where there are handcrafted items to buy. The music that's playing, it's such a holiday vibe. And at this point, I'd like to share with you a short video from a Christmas market that we went to in Germany. Just magical in the Christmas markets. This picture I included because you recognize the turrets from earlier in the presentation. This is in Budapest at Fisherman's Bastion. And as I had mentioned earlier, when you go on a Viking itinerary, if it's at a different time of year, even if not, because the guide is different, it's such a unique experience for that visit. The first time that we went to Budapest and we were on Fisherman's Bastion, it was in the upper 90s. On this day, it was 17 degrees. Completely different experience, but truly amazing. I have a niece who just graduated from college, and I decided as a college graduation present, I would share a Viking itinerary with her. And so I wanted to take her on a Christmas markets adventure. And I chose the Rhine Getaway to take her on. And this is the map that shows where you float down the river, the Rhine River, from Amsterdam to Basel. And having been on this twice, once on the Rhine Getaway, once on the Grand European, I thought she would enjoy this, and in particular, the Castle Day, where we go through the Rhine River Gorge. Much to my surprise, just as I had found out earlier, of the 7 stops at Christmas time, 5 of them are different than if you go any other time of year. So for me, having been on this itinerary twice before, it was completely unique, A, because it was in the winter, but B, because we went to 5 different stops. And of course, Castle Day did not disappoint. Completely different because of the weather, because of the snow-covered hillsides and castles. It was just an amazing experience. My niece loved it, and I have a short video to share with you of Castle Day on the Rhine, where we look at all the vineyards and all the castles again. So let's take a look.
Welcome to the UNESCO World Heritage Sites of the Middle Rhine Gorge.
It's Castle Day on the Rhine. Let's get the show started.
And there's the first castle of the day. Picturesque.
We'll come out on our left side. Once we're there, I tell you all about it. The name is Lauren Iron. We come on first. You also see one of the 2 local churches on the right-hand side. On the roofs, some steel chimneys there. As we are passing a river kilometer marker 547, approaching the cute little town of Kalp on the left-hand side.
Rhine Castle's just a great day in the Yes.
My favorite part, if I had to pick one, of the Christmas market itineraries is when you're in the Christmas markets to get a mug of ghoul wine, the warm wine. You can get it in a souvenir mug, which makes it even more special for me. And you can see me pictured in the Christmas market at the left and my niece and I sharing a mug of ghoul wine at the right on board. I love collecting the mugs. And the picture down at the bottom, this is on the final day as we were packing up. On the top shelf, you see all the trinkets I got from the Christmas markets to bring home. And on the bottom shelf, you see all of the various mugs from the various Christmas markets where I had ghoul wine and brought them home. I now have close to 20 mugs that I display at Christmas time on our bookshelf. Each of the individual stalls, I love the handcrafted gifts. It's so difficult to decide what to bring home. But for me, one of the things that I do on all of my itineraries, not just the Christmas markets, is one of my keepsakes that I have is socks. I get socks from every itinerary we go on with Viking. And I was so looking for a pair of socks from this Christmas markets, never found any. And on the last day in the Christmas market at Freiburg, there was a stall just for socks. And so I got to have my socks from my Christmas markets trip. There's a third option if you're going to travel with Viking, and that is on their expedition ships. They're having more and more itineraries that they're being offered. And it is another excellent way to see the world in comfort, as Viking says. The expedition ships are bigger than a river, smaller than an ocean. And all of the staterooms have a veranda, but the verandas are unlike any other ocean ship you've been on. And that is the veranda is actually inside your stateroom. And that's what the picture of my wife and I and the bottom right picture illustrate. The windows, there is a little switch you can just barely make out on the wall there that when you push the switch, the entire top window slides down so that you have like a French balcony with the comfortable furniture right there in your stateroom. If the weather's bad or if you don't want the window down, you can keep it up and your room's even bigger. The picture on the left, here's the bed, the dresser, the closets, and so on. If you look straight ahead, you'll notice the closet with the light on. Just beside that, to the left, you'll see what looks like a reflection. It's glass. That's the drying closet. There are 3 different vessels that you can take excursions on from an expedition ship. There's a submarine, there's a special operation boat, and there is what are called their little rafts that go out there, zodiacs. And because you're on the water, Viking provides you with all-weather pants and boots, and when you go in cold weather, the expedition jackets. Well, because they get wet, this drying closet, you can hang your clothes up in the drying closet, turn the heater on, and over the course of a couple hours, your clothes all get dried out. Like every Viking experience, it feels like a Viking trip. The ships are gorgeous. They have that Viking feel. The staff, amazing. They get to know you immediately and what you like. And it's just very Viking-ish, whether you're on the expedition, the oceans, or the rivers. Of course, the food, just to die for. And if you're on the oceans or the expedition, highly recommend going to Manfredi's. This is an Italian-themed restaurant. And for us, if we are on an oceans adventure where it's, say, 10 days, 14 days long, at least 4 or 5 times, we'll book dinner at Manfredi's. We love the food there. And we've yet to have anything, and we've tried them all, that we didn't just love. You would think that the signature dish would be something Italian, but it's not. It's a steak, and it's huge. The first time we ate there, my wife got that. As soon as they brought it out, I thought, I'm going to be having some leftover steak as part of my dinner. No, my wife polished the entire thing off. Just an amazing meal. So here we are in Manfredi's. And people would ask us, what has been your favorite all-time Viking adventure? Where have you gone that is your most very favorite. And until last fall, my answer would be, I can't pick one. They're all my favorite in their own each and unique way. But last November, we decided to take, again, a truly once-in-a-lifetime adventure with Viking, where we went to Antarctica. I can't describe for you what it's like to be in Antarctica. It's just breathtaking. You see the icebergs floating in the background behind my wife and I, and you would say, wow, those are big. No, you don't understand how big those are. Those are big as your house. They're just enormous. And the scenery, like anytime you're in someplace similar to this, I'll say, it goes, as you're standing there, it's 360 degrees around you. It's just stunning. Every single day, someone, usually multiple people, you'd hear them say, wow, because it was just wow, no matter where you went on the continent. Here you can see the zodiacs, which are approaching the shore, and we're actually on the continent. I can tell you that having been there, that we, the guides and fellow guests, it was a common topic of conversation, how fortunate we felt to be there, because the statistics say 0.05% of the entire human population ever has been to Antarctica. And we were there, walking on the main continent of Antarctica. Just amazing. The Zodiac experience, oh my. You get off the ship into these Zodiac rafts. And the first thing I'll tell you is, if you look at the picture on the right, see the ropes there? That's all there is to hang on to. You sit on the edge of the boat hanging on to that rope. But I can tell you, having been on those as we sped around the Arctic Ocean, you're very comfortable and you feel very secure as you're going along. The picture also shows us in the midst of an ice field. And on that day, I remember as we approached the ice field and the guide saying, we're going to go into the ice field. And all of us looked at each other and like, wait, what? We're going to go like right through yes, we went right through the ice. This iceberg you see on the bottom left, which kind of looks like a camel if you look at it. Yes, it looks big, but if we floated up next to it, if you stood straight up, the little iceberg at the bottom left, that's a good 8 to 10 feet tall. So this iceberg, 20, 30 feet tall, just stunning. Maybe you get a better feel for it if you watch this short video of us on the Zodiacs.
Put this to the beach, should we? Feel like where this. Different layers, different years. One yellow is one layer. Like if it's in the water, it's basically measured as clear and shed. And there's special formula, so there's no ice bubbles inside. But the Excursions, they have later on wrote in the amazing, huh? Yeah, it's all cool. Look at the good.
But again,
Yeah, mostly it's the ones that are grounded, and they just take some gravel from the ground and go from the beaches, and then they it's right there, so it goes away, then it go back. Very isolated place.
And if anybody wants pictures or they'll let them hang out or sit with.
Thank you.
Okay.
The windows, you know, was not caught. It's not. The bulk of the fish you need.
Here we are landing on the main continent at Antarctica. And I include this photo because, first of all, you'll see the zodiacs are in the water. And yes, the people are getting off in the water. Every landing, you're told up front, is what's called a wet landing. So they come up close to the shoreline while you're still in the water. Then one by one, you swing your legs over the side, step off into the water, and then walk onto the shoreline with the help of the various Viking guides. If you're thinking, well, I don't know if I could do that, let me tell you something. There were at least a dozen people of the nearly 150 people on board who were above 70, even 80 years of age, some of which you could tell walking around the ship had some kind of mobility problem. If they wanted to go, Viking made sure that they made it, helped them off the boat, and then as you walk up the shoreline, the snow, you can't tell as much, but the advance team would arrive on the site where we were going to land, and with shovels, they would dig out steps and a path so that when we arrived, we could just use our walking poles and walk along. And then they would put the shovels, you can see just to the right of the people, in the snow, so they were like rails along the steps to make it more comfortable to walk. Just so amazing. Again, look at the icebergs in the background. I just can't tell you what it's like to be there. Of course, everyone, when they go to Antarctica, wants to see the penguins. And this was taken on Cooverville Island on what we call Penguin Day. Hundreds, I mean hundreds of penguins everywhere. The rules are you're not allowed to approach the penguins, but if you stand still, they'll come up within 4 or 5 feet of you, and you can have pictures taken with them and so on. It's what an experience. And I have one last video to share with you of Penguin Day in Antarctica.
It is November the 10th, and we're in Cooverville Island, and oh my God, penguins everywhere, and glaciers everywhere. Just stunning.
They went to the fencing or they made it.
Sorry.
You see the ones that are about walking east. It's okay. I said they're chasing each other. They made about the dancing was ending.
Yeah, just because when I was here, there some of them were really having fun.
Yeah, you did.
No, step on my gun.
Day.
Penguins everywhere.
Do you see that bird? Is that? I don't know bird, though. The famous turn the bird. It's a duck.
No, yesterday was cool, but this is the best.
Did you see that big black bird? Right?
Several people ask us when we got back, like, wow, how cold was it? Like, no, not cold. I mean, you can see in this picture, I even have taken off my gloves and my hat. To be fair, we have on the pants provided by Viking. We also have on a pair of our own pants and long underwear, and we have a double jacket that is provided by Viking. So you are prepared for the cold, but it was at its coldest, probably just in the 20s while we were in Antarctica. It was just amazing. And most of the time after walking around on the land, I was drenched in sweat. It was so hot. So just an amazing, and if people now say, What's been your most amazing adventure? Going to Antarctica. It's someplace you have to go if you're an avid traveler like we are. So as of today, my wife and I have been on 14 different Viking adventures all over the world, all amazing. If you were to say, I'm going on fill in the blank itinerary, what is it like? I would tell you, if you're going with Viking, you're going to have an amazing adventure, a once in a lifetime, that if you're like me, it will turn into more once in a lifetimes. And one of the things that I enjoy most particularly is all of the different places that we go to, especially the ones that are iconic places. And I enjoy when watching a TV program or a movie and there is a scene shot there. The upper left, this was in Norway. And on this day, there is a bridge that they took us to it's very unique. It goes up and it curves midair and bends around. That's in one of the big scenes in the latest James Bond movie. And as my wife and I were watching the movie, I'm like, oh, we were right there. The bottom picture, this is when we were in Rome. Of course, as a world history teacher, that was on my bucket list to go to the Colosseum and so on. The latest Tom Cruise Mission Impossible, a lot of it was shot right around here. And I leaned over to my wife and I'm like, we were right there. So many of the excursions are just so amazing. Top left, we are in Croatia at the Krka waterfalls. And you're like, oh, that's cool, waterfalls. No, you don't understand. When you go to the Krka waterfalls, you walk around for 2.5 hours. There are dozens of waterfalls everywhere. It's really, really cool. The bottom right, obviously we're in Venice on a gondola ride. But the interesting story about this adventure, we were on the Mediterranean adventure on Viking Oceans, and we ended the trip in Venice. And we thought it would be fun, romantic, to, as our final excursion, take a gondola ride at night. We were on the trip with good friends of ours, another couple, and as we were waiting to board the gondolas, the host of the gondola rides came up. My wife and I were standing there, and he said, how many? I was prepared to say 2, because I thought it would be a romantic way to end the adventure, when the wife of the other couple said, there are 4 of us. And immediately the guide said, no, 2 only in this boat. And I thought, good, we get to have our romantic evening. So we climb into the boat. We no longer sit down. These 2 middle-aged men get into the boat. I'm like, what's the deal? I thought this was romantic. And the one guy's got this gigantic backpack. I'm like, what is happening? The boats push off, and there were about 10 gondolas in the group. The one guy stands up in the middle of the boat. I'm like, what is he doing? The other guy opens the backpack and pulls out an accordion. Turns out the guy that's standing up, he's the Italian tenor for the group. He will be serenading us the whole time in our boat. So every bridge we floated underneath, people would stop and point and look at our boat where we were having a personal Italian serenade sung right to us with the accordion right in our boat. Just really cool. One of the excursions that are offered on both rivers and oceans, which I highly suggest, is the home visits. The top left, we're in Passau, Germany, where this couple took about a dozen of us into their home, served us homemade strudel, almost as good as Schönbrunn Palace, but not quite, and explained to us what it was like to just live in Passau, Germany as an average middle-aged couple. On the right, this was in Beijing, where this gentleman told us about what it's like to live in Beijing. What was unique about this particular experience? His home was 3 separate buildings that went around a courtyard. None of the buildings were connected to one another. So for him to go from his living room to his bedroom, he had to go outside. We said to the guide afterwards, that's too bad he can't afford a better house. And she's like, no, this house, in quotes, has been in his family for generations and is worth so much money. He will never sell to have a traditional house. He will always keep this to pass it down through generations. And the bottom left, one of our very, very favorite excursions. In fact, so favorite that on a future trip, we're going to do this same excursion. This is in Corfu, Greece. And we went to this lady, the lady in red, her home, a villa, and it was called the Villa of the Roses. And as we pulled up, she escorted us to her back patio. And there she prepared for us a traditional homemade Greek lunch, including a Greek salad, served us homemade baklava for dessert, which she had made the night before, served homemade wine. All of that would have been cool enough, but what you can't see is right behind me where I'm sitting at the table taking the photograph, her veranda overlooked the Adriatic Sea. Like, oh my gosh, we're on a balcony overlooking the Adriatic, being served a homemade Greek lunch. Just amazing. The ships, whether you're on river, ocean, expedition, so comfortable. The public areas, the top left, my niece and I enjoying a pre-dinner drink as we're about to have the port talk to find out what's going to happen the next day. My wife on the top right, this is the coffee station. My wife loves her coffee all day long. So many different choices of coffee. In the morning, they put out fresh pastries. And then the rest of the day, there are homemade cookies that are out all day long. The bottom photographs are of a river stateroom. People who have been on ocean cruises, the first time they go on a river cruise, their first reaction is like, wow, this is a really small room. You're never in your room. You're there to sleep and to change clothes. More than enough room. And if you have a veranda, I personally like to have a veranda or a French balcony. So when I get up in the morning or while my wife's getting ready for dinner, I can open up the door and look outside. But when you're sailing along on cruising day, you want to be up top where you get the full 360-degree view. The public areas, really, really cool. They have that whole Viking feel to them. The top picture is two different views of the Aquavit Lounge, where you could have your lunch or dinner outside. The right bottom is from the living room on the Viking Oceans. All the comfortable furniture, they come around, the wait staff, and they'll provide you with drinks all day long, whatever kind of drink you want, coffee, hot chocolate, alcoholic beverages, soft drinks, whatever you want. And in the bottom left, this is on the front deck where they have rocking chairs. Just watch Europe float by as you're rocking along. The food on Viking cruises, just amazing. Manfredi's has a specialty restaurant. On the oceans, there is another specialty restaurant where they bake your steaks to order. But for me, the best food in the world is on the Viking River cruises. This particular night, we had our meal on the Aquavit Terrace inside. You can see with the panoramic view, just stunning. And it's just, the food is just to die for. I've never had a bad meal on a Viking River cruise. They're always just so amazing. And the best part about the meals are the people that you meet. The top photograph, we met these two couples on the Rhine getaway, and the couple to my right, on the left as you look at them, we became such good friends that we went on 3 subsequent cruises with them with Viking. The bottom right, this is from Portugal, and you'll recognize in the back right, there's the couple from the Rhine getaway. It's one of the cruises that we shared together. At this dinner table, we met these 2 other couples. Turns out the girl seated right in front of me, she and I went to the same college, literally like 2 years apart, go figure. And they live about an hour and a half away from my mom. So every time I go visit my mom in Ohio, I drive down to visit them. We've been on 2 other trips with them. The couple in the front right, Bob and Pam, met them on this cruise to Portugal. We've now been on 4 subsequent trips with them, and we have 2 more booked with them in the future. The couple on the left here, these are our good friends. We've been on 2 Viking adventures with them. We already have another one booked for the future. In the bottom right, this is a couple that we met on a cruise 6 or 7 years ago, and we've been on 2 subsequent cruises with them. This one was taken just last spring on the Tulips trip with Viking, which was just amazing. All of the excursions are just so amazing. It's not like a kid's kind of a trip. It's very cultural. It's very educational. And being classroom teachers, that's one of the things that we so like about the Viking adventures, is to be able to find out about the world and learn about the world and meet the people from all over the world. But again, and I've said this before, but the Viking staff, they are the best. They are so personal. They make you feel so special. And we feel like we've become personal friends with them, which often happens. The gal in the top left, who, in my opinion, was the best program director we'd ever had, we became such good friends that we subsequently became Facebook friends. We message and email one another still to this day. The bottom right, this was the bar waitress. She took care of us every night. She knew exactly what drinks we like and how we liked them. And they just made us feel so unique and special. The gal in the top left and top right, this is Diana on our right Rhine getaway. And I included these because she, like so many Viking program directors, was so personalized with us and made us feel so special. But every night, the program director gives you a detailed explanation of what's going to happen the next day. One of her stories was one of the best. She was telling us how the next day we were going, I can't remember the city, but they were sometimes had pickpockets. And so she was telling us to be careful and to watch our stuff, put it in our front pockets and so on. And she then told the story of how she had her own mobile phone stolen. Everyone gasped like, oh no, Diana, they took your phone. And then she chuckled and she said that about 10 minutes after she noticed her phone was stolen, she got a tap on the shoulder and this young college-age boy handed her her phone and said, this is your phone. I have stolen it from you. I'm giving it back. She looked at him. She's like, why are you giving it back? He's like, man, it is so old. It's not worth much. So you can have it back. So it's very amusing. The bottom picture, the gentleman picture on the left-hand side, this is Rick. I took my sister on the Elbe cruise. And let me, side story, when we were on the Elbe, the river water was so low that we actually couldn't sail. And so what we did is we lived on the ship and took the excursions from the ship. Then on the fourth day, we left the one ship, went on the excursion, and then they took us to the sister ship farther up the river and spent the second half on that ship, which was identical. And I told my sister afterwards, I said, I'm sorry you didn't get to experience the cruising part, but this was as good as any river cruise I've been on with Viking. And it was just amazing. Well, Rick was the program director. A year later, we went to Portugal, and the first night, the program director, the girl I showed you earlier, who became the Facebook friend, she told all of the guests, if you see Rick around, he's going to be a program director on Portugal's itineraries in the future. Say hi to him. Immediately, I went up to him like, Rick. He's like, Mark, what are you doing here? I'm like, what are you doing here? Such good friends. Still on the next itinerary, the bottom right-hand side, Rick having dinner with us that night, telling us stories from his various Viking adventures. Top left, this was from the Grand European. This guy was great. One of the things I liked about this guy, not only his sense of humor, but on every excursion, he got off and he would go to every group and take a group picture. And at the end of the Grand European itinerary, he offered a flash drive with all of his pictures to all of us. And so we had group pictures of all the guests who'd been on board. The bottom right, this is the same gal, Sophia, on the Portugal trip that I became such good friends with. And of course, the people you meet. Nothing beats the people that you meet. And what I particularly have enjoyed over the years is the people you meet then become fans of Viking like you are. Well, okay, no one's gone on 14 different Viking trips like we have, but all of these couples have gone on multiple trips with us. The Mediterranean at the top, Portugal in the middle, the tulips on the bottom left. Here you can see our entire group on the Portugal cruise. I include this picture because on occasional nights, there's entertainment in the lounge. And this particular night, there was a contest. And our group won the contest. And so you can see Sophia holding our prize. And the one gal, Mary Pat, in the front, the bottle of wine that we all shared as a prize. Well, our next adventure is coming up. I can't tell you how excited I am to go to Egypt with Viking. In the 8th grade, I was in the boys' glee club for high school, even though I was still in middle school. And I spent countless days in the choir director's office, and she was a huge fan of Egypt. Since the 8th grade, I've wanted to go to Egypt. Since seeing the movies, Death on the Nile, I've wanted to take a Nile River cruise. And finally, this is going to take place just next week, as a matter of fact. And we've got 5 more Viking itineraries already booked into the future. By the time we board the Viking longship on the Elbe in December 2025, that will mark our 20th adventure with Viking. Each and every one has been so amazing. I highly recommend that you take a Viking adventure. You won't be disappointed. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that you will become hooked on them as I have become, and then you'll take many future cruises with them, whether it be on the rivers, the oceans, or on the expeditions. And if you happen to see me, come up and say hi. We'll become best of friends and we can travel together. You can see all of my trips on my webpage, which is going to be posted here. And if you want, you can email me and ask me questions. Thanks for watching. I was really happy to enjoy our Viking adventures. Hope to see you on a future cruise.